Welcome again to another teaching on clarifying the actual view, part of the Vipassana section in the Moonbeams, written by Dagpo, Tashi, Namgyal. And we are towards the second half of the fourth chapter. And here the idea of Dagpo, Tashi, Namgyal is to make a statement. So, having explained all of that, all the preceding lessons, what do we call seeing? The view, the correct view, the actual view of the Buddhas, the awakened ones. And he starts out putting together many quotes, all saying that the point of the whole path is to develop an unshakable, non-fabricated certainty concerning the nature of mind and reality. Or to say it with other words, knowing suchness, the way it is, the way life is, the way it is, reality. So that's the point, certainty. We want to reach complete certainty, which goes so deep that it is unshaken by the experiences of life and death and dying, unshaken by emotional triggers, always there. And he says that simply resting suspended in ordinary, so-called stagnant non-conceptuality does not produce that certainty. He explained that already. If we simply rest without that necessary awareness, which will actually lead into a knowing, then we are kind of parked somewhere on a sidetrack, and whenever we come back into life, we have similar problems as before. We haven't really learned something. Now the decisive factor is that when we go into meditation, that we let the capacity to understand be fully active. We do not block that capacity. And in order to understand, we need to be interactive. Mind has to be enough stimulated in order to understand what's going on. We had explained this in the preceding teachings, simply repeats that here. So we need to be mindful, alert, and fully aware, which gives rise to seeing and the resulting certainty. For us beginners, to be fully aware means to maintain a certain level of interest, to be interested in knowing reality, which is actually the antidote to not wanting to know, the so-called ignorance, the blockage to full awareness. The antidote to that is to develop an interest in just how it is. Now the antidote can drop away when there is an open state of mind. We don't have to cultivate that interest anymore once we have sufficiently been able to open our mind. So don't think that we have to cultivate an active interest, while then later on being perhaps resting in non-duality. We need to cultivate that interest, which leads into a heightened state of awareness, whenever we notice that we don't want to look. Like something has happened, we were for a moment triggered maybe, we got into an affliction and a confused state of mind, and as long as we are on the path of purifying our mind and our veils, then we need to direct our interest there. What's happening? Or what happened? And we are interested to know. And that's exactly how the veils will be cleared. To enable this full awareness, we abandon even the slightest fixation on the experience of the fundamental view, this true seeing. And we also abandon grasping to the absence of self-entity or the lack of reality. And we rest completely open without any thought like, that's it, or that's not it, or this is empty, this is not empty. So this is in the stage where our practice of mental calm comes to a very fine discernment of reality. In that stage, before a real, completely relaxed knowing is the case, in that phase we are very much tempted in labeling our experience. Oh, that's it, that must be it. Or being enchanted with saying, oh, that's empty, it's truly empty. And like these confirmations of our past, we can be sure of one thing: the moment such an affirmation or confirmation arises in our thinking, we have lost it. That's for sure. And it is in no way a proof that before we were in it. It is more likely that because this commentary arose, that we were not in it. Because the true experience of just as it is does not trigger a comment. And it does not trigger a fascination. It does not trigger a grasping. So if we observe such a grasping, it's good to know that probably that what we are grasping to was not yet it. Because otherwise there would not be this fixation. However, a while after that experience, if we begin to understand that, yeah, that must be what all the awakened ones are talking about, then even if that was an authentic experience, such grasping and fixation can arise. Definitely. Because the patterns of pride, wanting to esteem oneself very highly and so on, these patterns will again arise. They are not purified yet. They are not completely purified. They just have taken a big cut, a severe cut. We can't really believe in the self, but we still feel very comfortable in feeling nicely about ourselves. So this combination is producing this clinging after an authentic experience. But normally, the typical difference with any other experience, which we call a nyam in Tibetan, a dualistic meditative experience, is that no fascination arises. That it is experienced as being the most normal, and there might only be an astonishment about just how normal it is. Remember the term ordinary consciousness, just how normal and ordinary the so-called awakening is. This astonishment is indeed a very typical sign afterwards. And then also this feeling of comparing back to all the efforts one has done in meditation, in one's Dharma practice, and then realizing this time, the seeing, this true seeing we are talking about, has arisen without any effort. No one has produced it, no one has done anything. So this also is a very astonishing and liberating insight that is the knowledge arising together with this seeing, that no one has produced the seeing, that this natural way of being has not been produced by anyone, and it's not dependent on circumstances. So with the true seeing, which goes deep enough, that conviction that it has arisen in an effortless way also arises. It's one of the signs. And the need for labeling, for conceptualization does not arise, and that's why it truly liberates. Because these elaborations we are talking about, these extra loops of confirming to an imagined self that this is it and so on, this is not necessary. There's no such thing happening. In this seeing that truly liberates, the so-called right view, Shamatha and Vipassana are both present, free from all grasping and all blockages. If not, if Shamatha and Vipassana are not both present in their unity, then it is not true seeing. So, besides these technical words, what does that mean? It is not an agitated seeing. It is not a grasping, fascinated seeing. There is the full calms of Shamatha. There is the depths of peace experienced in that moment, without any contrivance, without any effort, no artificiality. And it is not only that peace, but it is a deep knowing. So this deep knowing is such that arising from that knowing, there is a conviction, and one can test that out in the future, that one has now understood the heart of the Dharma, that now all the Dharma teachings are somehow clear. Maybe not into the last conceptual detail, but the dimension from which Dharma is being taught is clear. And it is this knowing without effort which makes everything clear. That is the aspect of Vipassana in that experience. That's why we say Shamatha and Vipassana are combined. And Tashi Namgyal adds, the result of analysis is to see and understand beyond concepts. So this is also important. I need to speak in concepts to explain that, but the actual seeing is beyond concepts, is non-conceptual. Initially, to investigate the view, it is impossible not to employ discerning wisdom, prajna. Everyone will use the intellect in order to understand, and will use the fine possibilities of differentiating experiences and exploring them, and all of that, which are called the faculties of prajna, of wisdom, discerning wisdom. Today I brought Prajna Paramita, the Great Mother, as the, you can say, the inspiring host of this meeting. And Prana, in the beginning, is this capacity to know, to differentiate, and so becomes finer and finer until prana itself becomes non-conceptual prana. The true prana parameter, that wisdom, that knowing which leads across the ocean of suffering. So, first we all need to employ the grosser aspects of prana, but later we learn to let the mind rest in itself, in suchness, in the empty nature of all appearances. Actually, these are just words, to let the mind rest in suchness. These words want to say that there is nothing to be changed with the experience. Suchness is always the suchness of now. We had this before. And the empty nature of phenomena is not something that is conceptually present in mind. Actually, the experience is one of non-grasping. And why is there no grasping? Because there is the knowing of the ungraspable empty nature of phenomena. That's why there is no grasping. I like the comparison with the rainbow. When children see a rainbow, some of them, they might want to run towards the rainbow to see where it goes, to kind of try to catch it. But as they try to catch it, they see it cannot be caught, it's ungraspable. And then they stop running, they stop grasping. And it's the same with our adult mind. The adult meditator has seen so often that whatever appears cannot be stopped, cannot be grasped, cannot be held back. It can also not be avoided. You can simply let it appear, and it dissolves the very moment of its appearance into the next appearance or experience. And this is like the experienced meditator not running after phenomena anymore, not grasping, because there is this knowing, this deep knowing. When we grasp, is the proof that we believe there is something to grasp at. So we can see for ourselves in which situations we are triggered and grasped, and other situations we are completely relaxed or a little bit relaxed. When seeing how it is, how it actually is, what's called the actual view, there is no seeing of anything, of any phenomenon. This is where the metaphor of seeing is difficult to understand for an ordinary being, because we believe seeing needs objects, and that whenever there is seeing, then there is an I, a self, which sees or who sees something. But in the seeing, the intuitive seeing of just how it is, of how life experience is, there is not this object present to a subject. It's a unified seeing. And in order to let ourselves come close to it, then meditation masters are advising us to sometimes go out in nature and lie on our back in a place, maybe on a meadow, on a hill, where when we look up into the sky, there is no frame, we cannot see any trees, it's only the sky. and we look away from the sun in the darker area of the sky where we are not so blinded. And after a while, of getting used to that, then continuing to look into the sky, we can make the experience that is seeing without an object, because we cannot objectify the sky. There is nothing to hold on to, there's no shape. So that comes close to the process of seeing the luminosity, you can say, the experiencing the ground luminosity of mind without any need for an object. That's why so often seeing the nature of mind or seeing the mind is compared to seeing the sky. So, there is no seeing of any phenomenon. Mind, free from dullness and agitation, does not conceive of anything. No idea, no object present, and does not grasp at anything. This seeing mind is free from mindfulness and attention involving subject and object. Mind rests free from elaborations. Now here, the word for mindfulness, Drenpa in Tibetan, Sati in Pali, is used in such a way that there is no need to remember to see. There is no need to be attentive or mindful of seeing. That means no effort. Effort includes usually the feeling of someone making an effort to produce an effect. This is absent. These forms of mindfulness and attention are completely absent in the true seeing. So all these dualistic forms of meditative mindfulness, awareness, they are not used, they are not necessary. And when it says here, mind rests free from elaborations, it means precisely free from the elaboration of a center of the experience. There's no construction of an artificial center called me, I am seeing. It's just aware, being aware, awaring. In German we can say gewahren, but in English it doesn't quite work the same way. But if we could, we would say awaring. And this awaring happens without need for anyone to tell it to happen. It's the nature of our life, of this stream of awareness, to be aware. In the nature of phenomena, in Sanskrit dharmata, just as it is, mind rests just as it is. It's a quote from the book. Mind rests just as it is. In the dharmata, in the nature of phenomena, just as it is. The message here is that the nature of phenomena is identical to the nature of mind. Actually, mind is resting in the ground luminosity which enables all phenomena to appear. So it's as simple as that since there is no more separation between mind and something else, that everything is experienced as mind, and then the non-grasping mind rests in the awareness of, you could say, of being at home, of no need to go anywhere, no need to control anything, just that's home. It's all nature of mind. When a Buddhist text says phenomena, the Buddhist teacher means something experienced in mind. Because nothing is experienced as outside of mind. Mind cannot know anything outside of its own nature, of its own dimension. So when we hear with our Western ear and conditioning the word phenomenon, we tend to believe that the teacher is still talking about something outside. So this is not meant here. We have to be very clear that the dharmas and the nature of dharmas, which is called dharmata, is the nature of experience. The nature of experience being just as it is, mind rests in that just as it is. No need for mind to be something else, because the phenomena have the same nature of mind. We have difficulties translating that, because it's difficult to convey the idea of understanding something that is not separate from that which understands. But this is exactly what is meant here. In the sphere of all phenomena, Dharma Dhatu, that means that spacious awareness in which all experiences arise. So in that sphere, complete simplicity, free from elaborations, mind rests free from elaborations. It's another sentence very similar to the preceding one. In the sphere, free from all elaborations, Dharma Dhatu, that utter simplicity in which everything can arise, then mind rests, relaxes or opens up, settles without searching for anything, free from elaboration, so without complexity, without needing to do any extras. Nothing. No complications. No projections. During that time, when mind rests simply in as it is, discerning wisdom, prajna, ceases to function as a mental activity distinguishing various aspects of experience. So there is no stimulation of that fine activity of our mind distinguishing everything. That is the experience of the one taste of everything, which is there, the one nature of everything. So the discerning prajna is not activated. And that same prajna, that prajna paramita, which is the mother of all Buddhas, shows as empty luminosity. which clears away everything that could be a flaw, everything that could still be a veil or blockage, dullness, agitation, idea of a self, and so on. All of that, has nowhere to stay. If it were to appear, it had nowhere to stay. So when studying this, for me this was a very important link, because most translators translate prajna, shared up in Tibetan, as discerning wisdom. And for as long as you have the word discerning, distinguishing, preceding the wisdom, you wonder what happens to that discerning, distinguishing capacity of wisdom. And Dagpo Tashi Namgyal quotes other authors and states very clearly, actually, that discerning, distinguishing activity is not being used, and prajna shows itself as empty luminosity. It is the same capacity of knowing, but it is the simple presence of that luminosity which is able to know and able to distinguish, but relaxed in its own nature. And that makes so much sense from the experience of meditation. This way of describing the capacity to understand with all its elaborate functions, and then the simplicity of basic luminosity experience in the non-dual state, there must be a connection. And this is exactly what is being explained, that the prajna, in its discerning, distinguishing aspect, ceases, but the prajna of, you can say, the ultimate, non-dual prajna continues to be present as the basic nature of mind. And, well, that's the basic empty luminosity, which clears away everything that could be a flaw. This is also, Dagpo Tashi Namgyal quotes a famous text, and this does not refer to, you can say, the one time or the initial touchdown into basic luminosity, into open mind, but it refers to the possibility that in the experience, in this non-dual experience, there can be a stirring of habitual tendencies, fine tendencies of dualistic perception. And if the meditator does not give attention to that, does not put any interest into the grasping and clinging, then there is nothing to be done, and you can say this luminosity immediately purifies whatever agitation is there, whatever dullness is there. So it is a fine process of ongoing purification for practitioners who experience this non-dual nature.